So the Mario versus Donkey Kong game is supposed to be coming out sometime later this year for the Nintendo Switch, and there are people who are stoked about it, but at the same time, I feel like there are other Mario games that people would love to have seen a remake for. Now, don't get me wrong, 2024 is the 20-year anniversary of when the original Mario versus Donkey Kong game came out back in um in 2004 for Game Boy Advance. And it's kind of different from what you would see from your typical Mario game because it was more of a puzzle-based platform game than it was a regular side-scrolling 2D platformer that people are used to seeing in just about every Mario game that is in 3D. And speaking of 2D Mario games, I remember the Super Mario Land series from back in the day. I mean, it was from like 1989 to like the mid 90s. Um, yeah, Super Mario Land 1, 2, and 3, all those games were considered to be iconic, especially the second one, because that was the one where Wario made his debut in 92 as the main villain. And then after that, he ended up being the main character of Super Mario Land 3, which is also called Wario Land, which I think it came out like in 94 or something, but that game Super Mario Land 2 Six Golden Coins. That was one of the most difficult platform games that I've ever seen. And I mean, it was damn near impossible, especially like when you got to the final stage. It was just absolutely brutal. But I feel like the plot was interesting and having someone other than Bowser as the main villain was it made people a little bit more interested in the series. And I believe all three of those games appeared on the original Game Boy, handheld game system. And and each of those games actually did pretty well in terms of sales. I think Super Mario Land 1 from 1989 sold the most because it was like the first Mario game for Game Boy. And I think Game Boy at the time was something that was new because handheld game systems was something that wasn't really a thing back in the day. So it stood out more. And I think Super Mario Land 1 did like 18 mil in terms of sales, and Super Mario Land 2 did like 10 mil in terms of sales. Um, I believe Super Mario Land 3 did like roughly over 5 mil in sales, but the Super Mario Land series is something that I feel like it should have continued, because Super Mario Land 3 was basically just Wario Land. I don't think Mario was even in that game. It just had that title. And I honestly feel like Nintendo definitely missed the opportunity to make more high profile games with Mario and Wario like together, like having Mario as the main protagonist and Wario as the main villain. Because like nowadays, I mean, Wario's more of an anti-hero, and he has been that since Super Mario Land 3. And I remember, the Wario Land games that came out in the 90s and all that stuff. And he had his set of games like in the 2000s with WarioWare and all that. It just doesn't seem like Wario's name value is where it was back in the 90s or even the 2000s. In fact, Nintendo has pretty much reduced Wario into being like a comedic character for the most part. And I honestly feel like Nintendo should have brought back the Wario Land series and I guess try to make him more of a serious character. But I think at this point, he's been devalued to a point where you can't really take him seriously anymore. But at the same time, his name gets people's attention, and I think the reason for that is because he's like the only real character that Nintendo's created that's actually an anti-hero. He's not really a solid hero and he's not really a solid villain. Nintendo's good at creating, heroic characters that you could build franchises around and then creating a villain that's almost equally as popular to basically challenge them in just about every other game that they appear in. But but yeah, it's a bit shocking that Nintendo has never did like a remake for any of these games because I honestly feel like that's something that people would be like emotionally invested in, especially considering the fact that I think this year would actually mark the 30-year anniversary of the Wario Land game that came out back in 1994. So like I don't think Nintendo's going to do anything as far as a remake is concerned, because I don't think they did anything with any of those games with Mario Land 1, 2 and 3 other than make it downloadable on Nintendo, eShop, whether it be for virtual console, whether it be for the Nintendo 3DS, or whether it be for Nintendo Switch. It seems like those are the only things they've done with it, because like generally speaking, I don't think Nintendo is too big on remaking like old, Mario games from back in the 90s or stuff like that. But obviously, I mean, they have remade like, Mario games from the 2000s, because we saw that with the Mario All-Star 3D collection, which came out I think it came out like 2 years ago or something like that. And it was a limited time, edition type of deal. So you had to buy it while it was out for a couple of months. And a lot of people feel like, if Nintendo are willing to remake their older 3D games, there might be some hope that they will remake like older titles from the 90s, having it where there's like 3D graphics and 2D gameplay. But I don't know. I think at this point there's like so many, Mario games and like so much stuff and projects that Nintendo's working on, that that's just something that they never really thought of doing, or it's just something that's not a priority to them. And because of that, I don't think they ever considered, bringing back the Mario Land series at all. But I do feel that in terms of like popularity, um, Mario's more popular now than he's ever been. You look at the success of Super Mario Odyssey, you look at the success of the Super Mario Brothers movie, and then you look at all the hype surrounding Mario Kart 9. Like with all that, I mean, there's really no need for Nintendo to necessarily go backward and remake these games whatsoever. But I'm pretty sure if these games all got like modern day remakes, it's something that the gaming community would definitely be excited about. It's something that would definitely turn heads, and I'm pretty sure they could do something similar um, with what they did with the Super Mario 3D All Star Collection, which came out a couple of years back, and they probably could make a ton of money off of it. But I don't think that's something that Nintendo really has interest in. I don't think they really have any interest in reviving Wario Land or the Super Mario Land series. And for the most part, I feel like it might be one of those things that's just left on the Nintendo online eShop, or it's probably just one of those things that people should probably go out of their way to find and to play on Game Boy, opposed to just have a Nintendo remake it, because obviously Nintendo likes to move forward when it comes down to games and all that stuff. And I feel like the reason why they did Mario versus Donkey Kong in terms of just remaking the game and re-releasing it is because it was a game that a lot of people weren't really familiar with during the time period that it came out. Because during the 2000s, the PlayStation and Xbox and all that stuff pretty much got a lot of people's attention during the console wars. And I mean, I feel like that time period, like the early 2000s, was kind of a dark period for Nintendo, because GameCube sold poorly despite how awesome it was, and Game Boy Advance, had some good Mario games, but unfortunately they were all overshadowed by Pokemon. So I do feel that Nintendo might possibly focus on remaking more, you know, popular titles from the 2000s opposed to the 90s. But yeah, Nintendo remaking the Mario Land series would be nice, but unfortunately I don't think that's something that's going to happen, and the chances of that happening anytime in the future are very slim.